Hello and welcome to stage 4 of the World Championship 2026 in Through the Ages. We are now down to 256 players, so a lot of players have already been eliminated, and those remaining players are again divided in groups of 4. We have 16 upper bracket groups, 48 lower bracket groups. I am, with being able to win my group in stage 3, will be playing in our upper bracket group in stage 4, meaning that if I win my group, I will also be playing in the upper bracket in stage 5, but if I finish second, third, or fourth, then I will go to the lower bracket. But from stage 4 on, there is no chance of being eliminated directly. There's no possibility of being eliminated directly from stage 4, even with a fourth position. You will then go to the lower bracket. And yeah, in the last year's World Championship, that was the stage where I didn't manage to win my upper bracket group and got into the lower bracket relatively early. So this year I want to make it better ideally and stay in the upper bracket for longer. However, that won't be an easy task because I have got quite some tough opponents in my World Championship group, and we will take a look at those opponents now. And the opponents in my group are Erock37, Tim248, and MWI. And yeah, those are quite some tough opponents. I will introduce them to you. However, before I do this, it has to be mentioned that sadly, at the time when the 4-player games were shortly about to end, Tim has decided to drop from the stage and resigned in the games. The 3-player games had just started, so the 4-player games will be with him, and then the 3-player games that we played with him were cancelled. But as a replacement, 2 new 3-player games have been started, only with MWI and Erock37. So we will play a total of 3 3-player games, and then also, of course, the 2-player games against each other. So that's, of course, a bit unfortunate, but with Tim at least deciding it while the 4-player games were still ongoing, there was the possibility of rearrange the 3-player games to still have some nice 3-player games without any resignations or bots involved. But so that's something to keep in mind. Tim will be part of the 4-player games, but because of real life stuff decided that he doesn't have the time or ability to play Through the Ages in the World Championship at the moment, and so decided to drop. So that has to be mentioned. So basically, the opponents are now Erock37 and MWI. I will nonetheless introduce Tim to you very shortly because he is, of course, part of the 4-player games. But let's start with Erock37, and those of you who have been following my channel might recognize the name because he was actually part of my last season's Intermezzo Championship group, where we both played in the Master Division. I finished at the second position with 19 points, only being tiebreaker resolve apart from making it to the Grandmaster Division, while Erock37 finished at third position with 11 points. So he stayed in the league, but also only with 1 point few. He would have gotten relegated. So for both of us, it was quite close, but Erock has shown there that he can compete on a high level, managed to stay in the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. In the International Championship, he hasn't played in the last season, and his stages so far in the World Championship that is currently ongoing were that in stage 1 he was a seeded player. In stage 2 he then had to start playing and managed to win his group with 31 points, so quite convincingly. In stage 3 it was a bit closer, but he also managed to win his group with 26 points, and that's how he got into the stage 4 of the upper bracket of stage 4. In the last year's World Championship, he didn't perform that well. He got eliminated in stage 4 in the lower bracket, and it was also quite decisive. So maybe he, during that time now, has quite improved, because I think the player that I got to know from my last Intermezzo Championship season wouldn't have gotten eliminated with that many points difference in the lower bracket of stage 4. So maybe he was able to improve himself quite a bit during that time. All right, then we have Tim, who I think is a relatively new player, at least some time ago. I don't know exactly when he sent me a message saying that he follows my channel and that he had just started playing. And in this year's World Championship, he also showed that he has the potential to be quite a strong player, because he didn't have to play in stage 1. In stage 2, he started playing and he actually managed to clean sweep his group with 39 points, so only wins. In stage 3, then it got a bit closer, but he won his group with 25 points and now made it to the upper bracket of stage 4. And for a relatively new player, that's definitely quite a nice achievement. He didn't play in the last year's World Championship. He also didn't play in the last season of Intermezzo in International Championship. So I don't know a lot else about his tournament performances, but what I have seen from his earlier stages definitely looked quite promising. Then we have MWI, who I think I will call just MV from now on. That's maybe a little bit easier. And MV, you maybe also know from some recent videos where he wasn't really involved, but you maybe saw him in the standings, because in the Grandmaster division of the International Championship that has just finished, he also was a part of. He wasn't part of the games that I showed in the videos, but he was part of the Grandmaster season and unfortunately got relegated, but still making it to the Grandmaster division is an achievement in itself. And in the season before, he actually managed to finish, I think, in the 3rd position. So quite some strong performances in the Intermezzo Championship. He is playing in the last season he finished 2nd in the Platinum division with 19 points, and in the current World Championship he didn't have to play it, because he is actually the one seeded player in this group. In each upper bracket group, there's one player who only has to start playing in stage 4 because of some strong performances in the last year's World Championship. MV in the last year's World Championship made it to stage 6 and only very closely got eliminated in that stage, so was able to make it further into the tournament than I did last year, and is just generally quite a strong player, which we will also see when we now take a look at the clicker rating of the players in the group. And as you can see, I am in the 7th position at the moment in the clicker rating, back in the top 10, which I'm happy about. But MV is not that far behind. He's in the 13th position, and the rating that he has is only slightly lower than my rating. So he is certainly one of the top players. And then we have Irok, who is a bit further behind, but as we saw in the last Intermezzo Championship season, he certainly can perform on a high level. And he's actually also in the current Intermezzo Championship season again playing in my group. So I have now quite a lot of games against him ongoing at the moment. So he's at the 54th position. And then we have Tim, who hasn't that many games yet. Where can we see the amount of games? Or the amount of opponents here. So he has far less opponents than I am and Irok, so hasn't played that many rated games yet, but is already in the 163rd position in the clicker rating, with the tendency to go quite a bit higher, because when we take a look at his estimated rating, it's actually only slightly behind Irok's rating, so he certainly will climb in the rating even further if he continues playing. Alright, we can maybe quickly take a look at the 4-player ratings, as we will now take a look at the first 4-player game. I'm a bit worse in that player count. MV seems to be a bit worse as well. Irok is a little bit higher, and Tim is quite a bit worse, so maybe not the favorite player count of most of the participants in the group. In the 3-player ratings, MV is quite a bit higher, I'm quite a bit higher, Irok is higher as well, and Tim is somewhat similar as in the overall rating. And in the 2-player rating, I'm actually on the top still. MV is quite a bit behind, so that maybe isn't his strong suit. Irok as well is quite a bit further down in the rating, in the 2-player rating, while for Tim it's maybe even potentially his strongest player count. Alright, now with the introduction out of the way, we will take a look at the first 4-player game, and I hope you're excited for it. In this game, I'm playing in the 2nd position, and first of all, as always, we will take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we have the two theater leaders in H3, Marlene Dietrich and Chaplin. But there's no Fleming, no Hollywood. The internet is there though. We have Pierre and the internet as well as a combination. Gandhi to hide behind, but no Manhattan Project, no Churchill. We have Einstein, Sid Meier, and Steve Jobs as lab leaders. There's also spaceflight, so also some synergy for that kind of setup. We have the Ocean Liner Service, Maria Theresa is a strong combination in H2. The Suez Canal and James Cook is in there as well, so some colonization payoff. We have Bach as a strong culture leader, as well as Darwin. Nobel is there, but no Newton. And then we have the two military action leaders, Napoleon and Robespierre. In H1, we also have two military action leaders with Jan Žižka and Joan of Arc. Genghis Khan and Barbarossa can help with the strength as well. Barbarossa and Columbus can maybe help getting into a colony game. And then there's Saladin as a very solid leader as well as Leonardo. Then we have both the strength wonders, Great Wall Nemichi Castle. There's the St. Peter's Basilica, but no Forbidden City, and the Machu Picchu as well as the Taj Mahal. Iraq is playing the first position. He takes the pyramids. And I'm playing the second position, and it is quite clear, I think, that I should take the library here. The question is, what card do I take together with the library? I could either take the Urban Growth, a very solid yellow card, and then I hope to get just one of the leaders at my next turn, or I could take Moses. My first instinct was certainly to just go with the Urban Growth, because Moses isn't the greatest leader, and there's maybe a good chance that I will get a better one. However, I did take a look at what my opponents might pick, and it could actually happen that Hippocrates and Ashoka are taken away and that Moses might end up being discarded before my next turn, and then I might just get Caesar at my next turn. But if I remembered correctly, there is even a chance that Caesar might stay on 2 civil actions for me. So it doesn't necessarily need to happen that way, but some reasonable lines would be leading that way, that Caesar would stay on 2. There are of course some other leaders that could be revealed, but apart from Boudica, I don't really want to pay additional civil actions for them, and not having any civil actions to take a leader also wouldn't be that great. So while normally I maybe would like to go for library and urban growth here's just the danger that I would potentially land in quite find myself in quite an annoying situation. And with that, I just went for Moses. Maybe not the greatest leader, but he's still providing a little bit of value, and I just now know for certain what leader I have and can then take a yellow card at the next turn. Tim will go for the Stonehenge as well as the Urban Growth. And then MV will go for Ashoka in the stockpile. Now it's Eroc's turn. He will go for Hippocrates, builds a mine, and then takes the urban growth, interestingly. So the normal choice would be here to increase population. But in the first position on turn 3, sometimes there's not that much stuff to do. The one resource that he will get as a discount in the lab will make it that 1-2 resource event from the developments will be enough to finish the pyramids a turn earlier. So I do think it is a reasonable line here. Now it's my turn. I will go for a relatively standard turn, but it was still not a very easy choice for my last civil action. I will elect Moses, build a mine, increase my population. And now I can take a yellow card, but of course with Moses there's also the possibility of just increasing my population another time, and that's maybe not too bad, because you then just front load a lot of civil actions, so you don't need to waste, I mean it's not a waste, but you don't need to spend a civil action on an inefficient HA yellow card, and instead can get that civil action out of the way, having then more civil actions to grab maybe some cards at the next turn. The thing is, of course, I don't know if there will be strong cards available for me to take at the next turn, and I would also go very early into consumption, so compared to now increasing my population, or for example taking frugality, that's 2 food for 1 civil action, and so I feel most of the times I still want to just take an HA yellow card, but it's of course an option that you have to have in mind, that there is also the possibility to just increase population another time with Moses. The question was now what yellow card to take. And it's an interesting choice, because we have Richland and Frugality, the 2 action cards that don't require an additional action to be played, which would be the case for the Cultural Heritage. And the Frugality would be the card that I could use for certain, because I will certainly increase my population a bunch of times. I of course have already some additional food with Moses, but on the other hand, having the Frugality might maybe allow me to get even further or even more Moses activations and get even more population out with him. So in a lot of situations, maybe I would just pick the frugality, but then again, with Moses, I have already additional food, so that might not be my biggest bottleneck here. And then there's, of course, one thing that you can do with Moses, with having the additional population. Sometimes you can manage to maybe sneak in a fourth mine, or maybe a third farm, but a fourth mine can sometimes be interesting with Moses, and with that, the rich land, which is sometimes a bit uncertain when you take it after having built a third mine, because you never know if you will get into irrigation or iron in time. But here there's also the possibility of maybe just building a fourth mine, which makes this rich land maybe be quite an interesting card. But then there's also one thing that I need to consider, and that is this copy of monarchy. Because when I either take rich land or frugality, the monarchy drops down to 2 civil actions for Tim, and Tim has the Stonehenge, so the monarchy would be quite a nice card for him to invest into, the early signs of the Stonehenge. And for Envy, it's maybe a fine card, maybe to take with Ashoka, but I think for him it's not nearly as strong as for Tim, so I could maybe argue that I want to let the monarchy stay in 3, deny Tim an easy opportunity of taking that card, and then I rather maybe give it to Envy, or maybe he doesn't even take it, and one of either me or Erok has a chance to take it. And there is some logic to it, but even when the monarchy drops down to 2, it's not that easy for Tim to take it, because the leader that he probably wants to have the most here is maybe Cleopatra, she works quite nicely with the Stonehenge. But if he wants to go for Cleo, then he needs to take her, elect her, then of course he wants to use her resources, or maybe building the second lab or step of the Stonehenge, and then already he doesn't have enough civil actions any longer to take the monarchy. Maybe instead he can do something different, but with that I thought it's maybe a bit annoying for him, or it's not the most easiest, not very easy for him to get that monarchy even for 2, and with that I at the end wasn't willing to compromise my a yellow card choice in order to let that monarchy stay on 3 civil actions. Of course, that could also be an argument to just increase my population another time, but at the end I actually went with the rich land, hoping that maybe at some point I will be able to get a fourth mine going with Moses, or just use it for an irrigation or my iron upgrade. Now I was interested to see what Tim would do. He starts by building a mine, he takes the monarchy, and he goes for an interesting line. He doesn't go for any leader, expecting that Boudica will still be available for him at the next turn, and then he can go for Boudica. A little bit delayed, but maybe even stronger than Cleo, so I think a fine choice by him, securing himself the monarchy, while then at least at the next turn being able to get a strong leader. Envy goes for the Hanging Gardens, who drop down to 1 civil actions for him. He then goes for Ashoka, builds a mine, and increases his population. It's Erok's turn, he increases his population, builds the second lab, and then takes the irrigations for 2 civil actions. I think taking the urban growth worked out quite nicely for him. Now he's at 4 resources instead of 3, but didn't have to go early into consumption. Now it's my turn. I will certainly build my second lab and also at least increase my population once, to not pile up too much food, which can lead to some corruption issues with Moses. And then the big and difficult decision here was whether to take Barbarossa or not. Barbarossa is, I think, just quite a strong leader. With Moses, it's interesting because I think he has a bit of a synergy, but also an anti-synergy at the same time. Because if you want to maximize maybe Moses and get a lot of activations out of him, then you spend a lot of food and you don't have a lot of food left for Barbarossa. However, I think the synergy between them might potentially be stronger, because I mean, now I have the rich land, maybe want to go into a fourth mine, but often you get that much population from Moses that you have more than you actually need anyway, so you can just go maybe for fewer Moses activations, but those few, maybe 2 or 3 Moses activations, will allow you to have some additional food saved up, which will then result in being able to go for additional Barbarossa activations, and those Barbarossa activations are just extremely valuable. So I do think it could be quite a solid choice here to just grab Barbarossa and commit already to a leader. And I especially thought about it because I was quite afraid that Tim likely won't go for him, and that then Envy would be able to get Barbarossa, and I think he has quite a strong Barbarossa setup. He has the Hanging Gardens, who I think work very nicely with Barbarossa. Happy faces and additional food are definitely things that allow you to go for more activations. And he has Ashoka to pile up even more food, so I think he has a very nice setup for Barbarossa, and maybe it could be worthwhile to remove Barbarossa here. I actually think it might be the correct choice here, but without having any tactic, without having any military technology, it's also a bit annoying. Maybe I have to use Barbarossa to just go for warriors. I don't know how efficiently I will be able to use him. I had still 2 civil actions that I invest into taking him. So it was a close call for me. Maybe I should take him, but at the end I decided to not take him. There are some other interesting leaders. Saladin with the Suez Cannon, Cook being in there. Columbus, I think, is an interesting leader. Shishka, Joan of Arc, Leonardo. There are other leaders that I maybe can get at some points. At the end I decided to just use my civil actions very efficiently, increase my population another time, and then also take the drama, which I think there's some synergy for in the game, with Bach being there, Marlene, the St. Peter's Basilica. So I, at the end, thought it's not too bad to have a copy of Drama in hand. Now it's Tim's turn. He builds the second lab with the Urban Growth. Will now go for Boudica, doesn't go for Barbarossa as expected, and then starts on building the Stonehenge. Doesn't go into consumption yet. Now it's MV's turn. He seeds and opens the development of planning. The options for that are the development of warfare, crafts, and civil life. He will choose the civil life and builds the second lab with it. He indeed will go for Barbarossa. I would have been very surprised if he wouldn't go for him here. And he just this turn picks all of the pieces that he needs. For Barbarossa, he needs happy faces. He has that with the hanging gardens. He needs food income. Has that now with the irrigation. And he needs an additional military action. Has that now with the warfare. So he just takes all of those cards and at the same time activates the full Ashoka bonus. Now it's Eroc's turn. He finishes the pyramids, takes the engineering genius and the drama. So he has now his 5th civil action going. Now it's my turn. I use from the development of planning the development of civil life to increase my population for 1 food with Moses. And the first action, as you can see, this turn is for me to take the warfare. And that already is a bit of a response to MV's last turn, because with all of those cards in hand, with the hanging gardens, with having Ashoka at the moment, I think MV will, maybe not in the next 2 turns, but probably at the end of H1, he has the possibility to go for a lot of strength, and then things could get quite dangerous. So I just felt like taking the warfare here for 1 civil action there's just a chance that it will make me a lot safer. It's already the 2nd copy of warfare. I won't take Jan Žižka for 3 civil actions, and it's possible that he will be taken away. So if the last copy of warfare and Jan Žižka are gone, there's of course still Joan of Arc, maybe Genghis Khan, but things definitely could get dangerous, and so I think the warfare is a very important pick here. Then I have 3 civil actions left, and there are certainly some different options on what I could do. I, as you can see, will actually build a 4th mine here. I could also not do this, maybe build a step of the library and take the breakthrough for 2 civil actions. That's certainly a line that I considered. With not building the mine, of course, I have only space in hand for 1 card, so I can't take a lot of cards in the row. And I wasn't completely certain if I should build a 4th mine here, but with the ridgeland it just works quite nicely. I pay only 1 resource, I get an resource back immediately, so even so I built this mine, I still have just enough resources to build a library at the next turn. Then I'm at 4 resources, 3 science production, and I've gotten some economy going relatively quickly. And I could now, after having built this mine, still just take the breakthrough. But I decided to do something different, and I instead took the frugality and built a step of the library. Of course, I could also consider taking a rich land, but I thought that the frugality will allow me, as soon as I have 2 food saved up again, just increase my population 2 more times with Moses, and then I have just a very fine amount of population ongoing. And I just went for a 4th mine, so I have some additional resources while I did commit the population. So with that, it just seemed more important to me to secure myself that copy of frugality. I could have also taken both frugality and the rich land, but maybe that would be a bit civil action inefficient, and also I would have a full hand. And at this point I was also really eyeing the St. Peter's Basilica that is coming down the row. With having built this 1st step of the library, I will be able, if that wonder isn't taken away, to finish the library and then take the St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn if there is nothing very important that I need to take. And the St. Peter's Basilica is maybe not the highest on my list of H1 wonders, but I think here there are a lot of synergistic things in my civilization. First of all, I with now even taking the Trugelit, he will have a lot of population, but at the moment I don't have any happy face solution. I have no happy face on my Wonder, meaning that I could just have a lot of population, but a bunch of them might just be unhappy, and that of course wouldn't be that great. But with getting the St. Peter's Basilica, I might actually be able to use all of those workers, which also might be important because I have committed to a fourth mine, which in a four-player game can certainly backfire if there's a military pressure going on. And I was a bit hesitant about building this fourth mine because of MV's Barbarossa setup, and I was really agonizing on whether I can actually commit this population, and I'm still not sure if it is the correct thing to do. But with the St. Peter's Basilica, it might be a lot more realistic to go for that fourth mine while still having enough population to also be safe in the military. Additionally, I have the drama in hand, and there is some synergy for the drama in the game. So with having the St. Peter's Basilica, I can maybe use those cheap dramas as a happy face solution. I'm set up for some more leaders with that, with going for dramas, and that's also a bit of a synergy here. So I thought that I at least want to have the option to go for the St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn, and with that, it was important to me to already build the first step of the library. Also, I think it's important to reveal the Legion tactic here, so that I the next turn can potentially build 2 warriors and fulfill the tactic in case someone increases the strength very early. Tim Seeds, the development of science, is revealed. With that, in the development of civil life, he can develop the monarchy. It takes alchemy, breakthrough, increases his population, and then builds a step of the Stonehenge to get out of corruption. Now it's MV's turn. He increases his population 2 times. That gets him out of corruption. Builds 2 steps of the Hanging Gardens, and then ends his turn just after having spent all of his civil actions on just taking cards at the turn before. Now he will just spend all of his civil actions on a civilization as a compensation. Erok this turn is willing to pay 2 civil actions for Shishka, probably a wise choice with MV having that big military potential, and who knows, maybe Erok can even go for some pressure himself. For now he's just revealing a fighting band tactic. Now it is my turn, and I didn't really want to move the deck forward because I likely might be rather one of the weaker players. And this turn I think it's relatively clear that I have to finish the library. It's first of all my way out of corruption, and it of course boosts my science income. And then it was a tough choice for me. There is the St. Peter's Basilica still available, and I still thought, especially with me being in full resource production, I can potentially finish it in 2 turns. I thought the St. Peter's Basilica is a very solid card for me to take here. But taking it means that I'm passing on those first military attacks, especially the swordsman with having the Legion tactic. Those could be quite important to have, and not taking them and potentially even leaving some of those cards to Barbarossa could backfire quite heavily. So the question is here, do I play it safe and take one of those cards for 2, or do I rather aim towards the St. Peter's Basilica? There's also Nemichi Castle coming down the road, but with Erok having the engineering genius, I think I have to expect that that wonder will be taken away. And I at the end decided to go for the St. Peter's Basilica, and I was willing to skip those Swordsmen and Knights. At least those are the first copies, so I still have a chance to get those other ones. And while the Swordsmen of course help me for the military, the St. Peter's Basilica also does, with maybe freeing up some more workers. And I really felt like the St. Peter's Basilica is quite strong in the position for me. So I at the end was willing to take it, but I didn't feel too great about leaving those first military attacks behind. I draw some cards, the Naval Trade Agreement and the Enslave. Tim doesn't see it, takes Leonardo, he has the Alchemy in hand, so he has the potential to go for quite some science income. He then goes for the Alchemy, goes up to 4 science production and increases his population, takes the Urban Growth for the 2nd upgrade. And also doesn't take any of those military attacks, so he could have taken the Swordsman instead of the Urban Growth. That seems a bit greedy to me, but let's see if he gets punished for it. MV Seeds, the development of religion, is revealed. I was very happy to see it, because now I have this religion. I will get the St. Peter's Basilica. I will then have 3 happy faces, and if I increase my population 2 more times with Moses and then lose my 2 yellow tokens, that is the exact amount of happy faces that I need. So with now the happy face of the religion doubling soon, I was very happy to see that revealed, especially because MV might not need a religion, even though with that much food in Barbarossa he also might go that deep into his yellow bank soon that he actually needs the 3rd happy face. As we can see, MV has the medieval army tactic, and sadly he gets the knights for one civil action, so he gets another puzzle piece to maybe go for some big strength pressure with Barbarossa. And I was quite a bit worried to see that he goes for quite some food income, and soon he will be able to go for a lot of Barbarossa activations. For now he is still in 2 military actions at least, so he doesn't get a lot of draws in. Now it's Irok's turn. He offers an open borders agreement to Tim. Sadly not to me, but both Irok and Tim already have an additional military action, so it makes sense that that Irok offers it to Tim. At least he doesn't offer it to MV, but that would have been quite crazy. And he goes for a swordsman, goes up to 5 strength, so starts a bit of military pressure, especially because he will be able to finish the Meiji Castle at the next turn to go up to 7 strength. Now it is my turn. I will actually start my turn by offering the naval trade agreement. As we will see during my turn, those 2 additional blue tokens will allow me to go for a line that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to go for. And I give Irok an additional colonization force. I definitely didn't want to give MV an additional colonization force because winning colonies with Barbarossa is just so insanely strong. Irok, of course, might profit potentially from it as well. There's a Suez Cannon and James Cook in the game, so it's maybe still not great, but as said, those additional blue tokens are actually quite helpful for me. And not that long ago, I think I had a game where like 4 or 5 turns in a row, the additional blue tokens from the naval trade agreement saved me from corruption. So those 2 blue tokens shouldn't be underestimated, and I kind of like to get those going. It will at least take a while until the event deck flips, and Irok himself hasn't seeded any cards yet, so maybe he has drawn a colony that he will push now, but it's a bit speculative from his side to accept or not. This turn I start by taking a breakthrough, which is just quite an efficient card to get for 1 civil action. And yeah, here's a bit of a choice. On a variation of action, there's an iron for 2 civil actions, but I don't think I want to take it for 2 here. There's some military pressure soon, and I think that's not the right time to invest into iron, and especially not to take it for 2, also because it's already relatively late. But there's a copy of Masonry. I've already finished Mage A Wonder, but I still could use it in the St. Peter's Basilica, and there are some interesting H2 wonders where I could use the Masonry on. Of course, at the moment, I'm not nicely prepared to win a colony, but there is still Columbus, who, depending on which leaders will be available soon for me, he might be the leader of my choice, with having at least a strategic territory in hand. And then the Suez Canal could be an option. Ocean Liner could be quite strong as well. I haven't built or upgraded any urban buildings from H1 or higher, so the Masonry I felt has quite some potential here. I liked that card generally quite a lot. At the end I took the breakthrough, I made space in my hand with playing the Frugality. I then took the Masonry and developed the Warfare. As you can see, I only can do this turn thanks to the additional blue tokens. Without them I would have to increase my population already an additional time with Moses, which also wouldn't be that bad. Maybe I could just keep the Warfare in hand, but while I would be able to defend with 2 military actions, thanks to my 2 bonus cards, and I could also keep the strategic territory for Columbus, thanks to the library, Irok could still try an aggression. He has an additional military action, and it would be quite bad to lose those 2 cards, so I rather want that he doesn't try an aggression, because losing those defense cards is some damage also in itself for me. So I felt it's quite good to develop the Warfare. It also gives me more draws. If I indeed get Columbus, maybe I have higher chances now to draw an even better colony. And I considered also to develop the Masonry already instead of the Warfare, but I just felt a bit safer with already developing the Warfare. I still wanted to have the Masonry, as I think that cards just has quite some potential, and so at the end that was the turn that I was going with. There would have been also a cartography with the Suez Cannon, James Cook in the game. Maybe it could have been a shot, maybe I could have ceded the strategic territory, but soon there will be a lot of military pressure going on. I might be on the weaker side, and then winning colonies is especially dangerous, so I didn't want to go for that line of play here. I draw some cards. I indeed draw another colony, so if I should get Columbus, I also have the developed territory to choose from. Tim gets the iron now for 1 civil action, will start upgrading to it, builds another stage of the Stonehenge, adopts the fighting band tactic, and then takes the cartography. Now it's MV's turn. He seeds, opens the development of politics, so sadly he gets some additional cards. That actually in this situation might be quite a strong development for him. He then switches to Barbarossa, plays the stockpile, develops the knights, goes for 2 Barbarossa activations. He can't do more at the moment because of only being on 2 military actions, so that's at least a disadvantage for him. He then finishes the Hanging Garden, soon can go for more Barbarossa activations and for even more strength, especially with taking the Patriotism, which will help him with that, and which might even allow him to go for 3 armies by the next turn. Irok Seeds, the development of markets have been revealed. He will this turn finish the Michi Castle, goes for upgrading a warrior to swordsman, takes the rich land, develops the irrigation, uses the other rich land to upgrade a farm, and then increases his population. Now it's my turn, and as you can see, the one leader that is available for me now, even for one civil action, is Columbus. The other ones are late, and with me having those 2 colonies and with Suez and Cook being in there, I think it's definitely the correct choice to take Columbus here. Especially, he could even help me militarily, because in case I need it, I can use him to get a strategic territory, and the 2 additional strength and the 3 draws could actually be helpful for me in this situation. I potentially could even finish the St. Peter's Basilica this turn, but again, Irok might potentially try an aggression against me. I might lose my defense cards, and I kind of wanted to keep them, so instead I decided to delay the St. Peter's Basilica by at least 1 turn. I take Columbus, increase my population one last time with Moses. I even considered electing Columbus and increasing it afterwards, as that 1 food likely will just be lying around. But with the additional blue tokens from this pact, I maybe should be able to keep that lying around. At some point, it might still again be useful to have the additional food. So here I decided to still use the discount for Moses, then switch to Columbus, develop the masonry already, and build a step of the St. Peter's Basilica. I could have taken the alchemy here, which would give me the ability to increase my economy, and especially with the masonry, the upgrades to the alchemy are extremely cheap. But I kind of wanted to be able to finish the St. Peter's Basilica in 1 civil action at the next turn and still have some free civil actions left. For example, if there's an early H2 government form by the next turn on 3 civil actions, or maybe an early coal. I just wanted to be able to react to those potentially strong early H2 cards. And there's another copy of Iron and Alchemy coming down the road, so I also felt like I might just get another chance to take such a card at the next turn. I keep my 2 colonies and all of my colonization cards. I draw a blunder. Tim is quite low in strength at the moment, so now he kind of needs to start increasing the strength. Now maybe he regrets it a little bit that he didn't take those swordsmen earlier on and instead went for the urban growth. He sees development of agriculture is revealed. The event deck is flipped now. He goes for the cartography, so that also at least gives him some additional strength. He finishes the Stonehenge before he loses it to the end of the age, increases his population, upgrades a mine, takes the reserves, and then builds a warrior going up to 4 strength. However, he then interestingly reveals the phalanx tactic. Maybe to just use H1 military actions now, but it's an interesting choice because he has an open borders agreement with Irok, and with that he's now 7 strength behind, meaning he needs 3 defense cards. So there's maybe a chance that he forgot about the pack. Bro, I mean, at this level, that's something that you definitely shouldn't expect, but it's still a possibility. Sometimes you can forget about it. That's nothing, no reminder or something. That can happen sometimes even at a high level. And yeah, even if he has to defend, he has to discard quite a lot of defense cards. An interesting play, but of course it might result in some additional H2 draws, and then that might make sense because there are 2 knights, so at the next turn Tim likely should be able to get one of those knights. It's Envy's turn, he seeds, and I was quite a bit annoyed about this rebellion being revealed because I am just about to finish my St. Peter's Basilica, but sadly it's the first event that we see from the H1 events, and it will cost me 2 civil actions, so I wasn't too happy about it. Tim plays the Patriotism, goes for a knight, a warrior, another warrior is now at 15 strength, and then he has 3 civil actions left and actually takes a bunch of technologies, which is interesting because he doesn't have a lot of science at the moment, but maybe if he starts with alchemy first, he will be able to use those techs eventually, but maybe could have also just taken 1 tech and then the reserves. Of course, also not ideal, but at the moment it seems questionable on when he will be able to use all of those techs, and having a full hand is also somewhat problematic. He has, of course, only 1 card in hand. He has 15 strength, so he's quite threatening, but he has only 1 card in hand. But at this point, we should remember the development of politics that just recently has been revealed. So I still was quite afraid that this 1 card might be an aggression and that I could get hit by it potentially at the next turn. And And a player who gets hit by an aggression first is actually Tim. Irok decides to give it a try. And Tim can defend, so it was not an oversight by him. He just wanted to save a military action. It was still a bit of a risky play because Irok, the cost for him for playing this aggression is not that high, of course, depending on whether he has a nice event to seed. If he skips a nice event in order to go for this aggression, then it is quite a cost, but if he maybe doesn't have a lot else to do, he will now build one military unit, so misses out on one draw, but Tim has now 3 defense cards less, and that might make it quite a bit more challenging for him to defend future aggressions. So Tim went for a bit of a risky play, and even though he can defend, maybe still gets punished here. Irok builds a swordsman, increases his population, upgrades the second farm. He will now lose a yellow token, only 1 because of Hippocrates, and then he has just enough food to increase his population, takes another rich land for potential iron or coal upgrades and a copy of reserves. Now age 2 will start. I will lose 2 yellow tokens, and I have an uprising issue, but I have, of course, the St. Peter's Basilica. Sadly, the Rebellion was the one card that was revealed before my turn, annoyingly, so I have only 2 civil actions to work with, and at the beginning of my turn I had an interesting choice to face. Because I have Columbus, and I have 3 choices. Either I use him for strategic territory, or I use him for developed territory. Or I decide to not use them at all and try to hope for an early age 2 colony, which of course can be quite strong if I should get rewarded for it. And the main question was, do I need the strategic territory to be safe, or can I play it a bit more greedily and either hope for an age 2 one or maybe get the economical benefits of the developed territory 1? By the way, I didn't lose my 2 yellow tokens yet, so the developed territory doesn't help me to increase my population. At the end, I came to the conclusion that I need the strategic territory to be safe, and it's also not too bad. 2 strength and especially the 3H2 draws, giving me now the fortifications tactic as well as the scientific cooperation pact, are potentially just quite interesting. The thing is, I this turn want to finish the St. Peter's Basilica. I can build an additional warrior potentially, but if I don't have the 2 additional strength from the strategic territory, even with building the warrior, I'm at 7 strength, so I would need an H2 defense card to defend against Envy, and that is just unlikely if I don't get the additional draws from the strategic territory 1. So if Envy has an aggression, he then very likely will choose me as a target. Tim, of course, is even lower in strength than me, but he now can go into Knight, still has 4 military actions, so if I don't go for the strategic territory and Envy has an aggression, I felt like I might be the target. Again, he has only 1 card in hand, but then again, the development of politics was just recently revealed, and if he has drawn an aggression, he certainly might have maybe kept it in hand, and so that he can pull one off in case one of his opponents leaves himself vulnerable. And yeah, so at the end, I just felt a lot safer because now I'm at 8 strength. I still need an H2 defense card to defend. I could build a warrior, then 3 H1 defense cards would be enough, but I have only 2, and 3 just got discarded by Tim, so I rather wanted to maximize my draws. And with getting 3 draws at the end of my turn, I had 6 H2 draws, which gives me quite a decent chance to at least have 1 H2 card available, and with that I was hoping that MV doesn't choose me as a target for an aggression. I finished the St. Peter's Basilica, and if I wouldn't have lost the civil action from the rebellion, then I think here I might have considered just grabbing the scientific method. Now I will go for the cheaper and maybe less good version of that and take the alchemy, because now that I can't take the scientific method, I have to expect that it will be taken away. MV has a full hand, so he can't easily take it, but Irok could potentially, with the reserves, even go for an upgrade at the next turn, so with the first copy of that being taken away and with me not having upgraded anything of my economy yet at all, I wanted to secure myself the alchemy for 1 civil action to soon at least be able to upgrade 1 thing, especially with being low in civil actions. I could get overwhelmed by the things that I need to fix in H2, especially if maybe I indeed want to go also for something like a Suez Canal, so here I think the alchemy is a fine pickup. I keep the scientific cooperation pact, the fortifications, as well as the 2 colonization cards, and I was very relieved to see that I have now, out of my 6 draws, indeed gotten an H2 defense card, so now I can defend an aggression from MV. Tim takes the knights for 2 civil actions, develops them, builds a knight, is now at 8 strength, so the same as me, but he will get even higher in strength by building another knight, and is now at 10. So he also should be quite safe, even though he needs still 1 defense card to defend against MV, and he has just sent 3 away. So if MV has an aggression, I would actually choose rather Tim as a target than me. But MV doesn't have an aggression, he has a trade routes agreement pact, so not as exciting maybe, but as you can see I actually accept it. MV is still being on bronze mines, having a lot of upgrades and stuff to do. It is quite useful for him, I think, to use food as this additional resource. Of course, that means that he maybe can't do a Barbarossa activation soon, but getting another knight or another warrior is maybe also a bit of overkill, so it is a strong pact for him, but when we take a look at my civilization, it's also a strong pact for me. I am stuck at 3 food, and now I will be able to increase my population thanks to that pact. So it's strong for him, but because of it being strong for him, he offers it to a player who it's also strong for, and I'm actually willing to accept it here, as that will help me a lot to get out of corruption, just being able to increase my population, and of course I then have an additional population to work with. MV indeed fixes the science income first, which I think is the correct choice here. He goes for 1, even for 2 alchemy upgrades, can maybe start going for iron then at the next turn, even though then of course he has a full H1 economy, which can sometimes be a bit problematic. Now it's Irok's turn, he seeds, and sadly now a strength event is revealed, the border conflict. MV now gets some additional resources that will help him accelerating his economical investments, and I sadly have to destroy something at my turn. Irok goes for an iron upgrade, or rather takes and develops the iron, goes for 1 upgrade. He could have taken scientific method, developed it, played the reserves and went for an upgrade, but then he would have skipped the iron, maybe something that he wasn't willing to do here. And now it is my turn, and I was quite happy to see this Republic. I was also happy that Irok didn't take it away, but he just had some other interesting options, because I have a lot of science saved up. Being stuck on 4 civil actions for longer could be quite problematic, but now I can get a very big boost to my civil actions, and I have the warfare, so at least I will have my 3rd military action secured. And I don't really want to play politics as the weakest, I can't declare war, so I decided to offer the Scientific Cooperation Pact, and I offered it to Tim, who has the most science saved up, the biggest income, has Leonardo da Vinci. I felt like there's a chance he would accept it. Of course I have more science saved up, but I will also do a big investment now with the Republic, while Tim already has his government form, and it's very early, so in the long run we just both might get a lot of activations out of it, so I was hoping that he would accept it. But sadly he rejects it, maybe being a bit, maybe fearing what, that I could maybe just develop too much stuff. For example, I could develop Republic, Alchemy, and Drama, and that maybe could, then I already would have gotten tons of value out of this pact. So I can understand that he is afraid. On the other hand, it's so early. Of course, I can do all of those things and then potentially cancel the pact. It's always a tricky pact to evaluate when you have to decide whether to accept it or not. So I definitely can understand that he rejects it here, especially with there not being maybe the biggest danger that the opponents would accept this pact, with both of them not having a lot of science saved up. I was a bit unhappy, of course, about him rejecting the pact, because, for example, being able to go into Republic and an Alchemy upgrade could have been quite strong. Now I will develop the Republic. I will take the cannons with having drawn the fortifications tactic. I think that's a must pick. There's also an early copy of selective breeding. The thing is, both Irok and MV have already irrigation farms, so despite that normally being an important grab, I think here it's not that important actually, and I can use my 2 civil actions differently. If I would have gotten the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I actually would have considered to, from the border conflict, destroy a religion, and then with the last 2 civil actions develop the drama for only 1 science with the pact, and then build a drama. That's what I planned to do with the pact here. But the drama would actually cost the same as the religion, and I would nicely do transition, just get a bit of more culture income, being prepared for some leaders, and being able to build more dramas if I have some population lying around. So I kind of would have liked it. But now with that not being possible, it is actually still possible, but it's a lot more costly science-wise. I would drop down to 0 plus 3, and I certainly was not willing to do that. It would take then a lot of time until I can get into something of like coal and cannons and stuff. So now I think I just don't have the science to invest into drama like that. Instead, I decided to lose the fourth mine that I built earlier, but I actually decided to, after increasing my population with the Trade Routes Agreement pack before rats or something are revealed and I can't do it any longer, I decided to actually rebuild the fourth mine. It didn't feel ideal. Normally, if you commit to a fourth mine and at some point a border conflict is revealed, you often just accept, okay, I will go back to 3 mines and use the population elsewhere. The thing is, I had 3 population lying around, and I felt like if I would encounter myself in such a situation, I again might just build a bronze mine. Still would just be a good thing to invest into. So just because it feels bad, because it it's just kind of bad losing it and then rebuilding it again, makes it now feel quite a bit less efficient. But I still think it's just a great thing to invest into here. So I at the end was fine to just rebuild it. I don't really need a code of laws. I have the opera, I have the drama, so I don't need the opera. And now that I have this tactic, I also don't need swordsmen and knights. I draw 3 cards here and I was quite happy about my draw. I draw an autonomous territory, meaning that if I should get a Suez Canal now, that Suez Canal could end up being quite strong for me. Tim Seeds, I'm still the weakest, and sadly I do also get punished for it. The Reign of Terror is revealed, so I will lose the population. At least I have 2 free population, but now maybe the 4th mine is again a little bit greedy. Tim goes for the Code of Laws, which I think is an important technology for him, takes the journalisms, interestingly. At least short term, it doesn't look like he has free population to go into it, but long term, of course, it can be an interesting technology to have. Interesting that he takes it over opera. There's Bach in the game, Marlene, Chaplin, so taking opera for 1 instead of journalism for 2. Would maybe be interesting. Also, he takes it over the selective breeding, so it was quite an interesting choice here. Of course, if he gets it going with Leonardo, then he gets actually quite a big science boost. So maybe there's an event coming that will help him go for that. So interesting choice here by Tim. Now it's Envy's turn. He seeds, and the knowledge of the ancients is revealed. It could end up being a crucial event, because before that event I was at 6 science, now I'm at 9, meaning I could potentially invest into the coal that is coming down the card row. Envy develops the iron, goes for 1 upgrade, does another Barbarossa activation, so actually isn't using the pact this turn that he offered to me last turn. Instead goes for the additional warrior, but from now on he is just at 1+1, so he can maybe just use the pact every turn and use that 1 food as resource. He also takes the 2nd copy of Republic to maybe soon go into more civil actions. Now it's Eroc's turn, he seeds, and another big strength event is revealed. I was quite a bit annoyed. Now I have certainly gotten hit by quite some bad stuff. And I was also again a bit annoyed about the card order here, because the rebellion was revealed first. At this point Tim was actually the weakest. And then after the rebellion I had my happy faces fixed, I guess now, but it's only because of the uncertain borders. I have an unhappy worker again, but yeah. It was not the perfect order for me, but of course, if you are the weakest for a while in a 4-player game, that's always something that you have to take into account, that you might just get punished for it, and sadly I did get punished quite heavily here now. Eroc goes for the scientific method, goes for an upgrade, takes the cavalryman, important military technology for him, and then increases his population and plays the reserves for resources. Now it is my turn, and I think I just skip. Oh no, I don't skip my politics phase. I think I almost overlooked it, but it's the World Championship. I have to play very carefully, so I did think about canceling the Trade Routes Agreement pact, because it certainly maybe at the end of H2 there is maybe the potential that I could use it again, but it at the moment just looks like I just am at 0 food and I won't be able to use resource as food anytime soon. So I canceled this pact, as I felt like from now on it will be quite nice for MV to use it. As you can see, I immediately start by taking the coal. I think it's just such a strong technology for me, and I will also take the selective breeding. Then of course it would now be the thing that you might expect now would be to develop the coal and go for an upgrade. And that's also what I kind of wanted to do here. But I decided against doing that. And the reason for that is that I think I could get punished quite heavily. MV didn't have a lot of H2 draws, but there is still the chance that maybe he could have a war drawn. Also, Eroc, while he is only at 10 strength now, also could have a war drawn, and he could maybe do some investments either into another swordsman, giving him another tactic, or maybe into a cavalryman, and also he goes up quite a bit in strength. And if I should invest into coal, I'm at 2+3 science income, meaning that I'm 1 science away from developing the cannons at the next turn. So if I should get hit by a war, if I go for the coal now, I can't go into cannons. I could just build more warriors, and especially if MV has a war, that could just be an extremely big setback and something that I have to be very careful about. Maybe it's not that likely that I have drawn a war that early, but it's certainly possible. And there is an alternative that I think is only slightly worse, maybe, if it is even worse, and that is to, instead of investing into coal, actually investing into one alchemy upgrade. Now I have enough science to go into cannons, and with using my last 2 actions to take the wave of nationalism, I also have enough resources to build 2 cannons and reveal the tactic, which should make me safe from all wars. Sadly, because of the Reign of Terror, I don't have enough free population to build 2 cannons, but maybe I have to destroy my 4th mine then again if something like that should happen. But just threatening that much strength should be enough so that I hopefully won't get hit by any war. So now, Columbus drawing me these fortifications. I guess I might have just drawn it at the end of the turn when I used Columbus, but still having this tactic early on and getting the cannons certainly being helpful for me now, but I now had to be careful as I otherwise potentially might have gotten punished quite heavily. I mean, it's maybe not that likely, but if it happens, it could just be game over, and fixing the science income first is not bad. Alchemy plus library can maybe be a long-term solution, maybe it makes it possible to go into computers, so I felt like it's a fine choice to go into alchemy, and then I, at the next turn, can actually invest into coal, and I will have in 2 turns then just enough science for cannons, so then I would actually be able to go into coal while still being able to defend myself. I keep 2 colonization cards, the tactic and the autonomous territory. I draw another colony and the promise of military protection pact. Tim gets a very early ocean liner service here, which I think is quite a strong card for him. Now it maybe pays off that he didn't invest into selective breeding. Interestingly, he isn't willing to take any of those selective breedings, meaning that he has to at some point handle maybe some famine issues with the ocean liner, but instead he takes Darwin. Again, an interesting decision. At the moment he has just the amount of happy faces that he needs, so as soon as he loses the religion, the happy face from that, things could be a bit awkward, especially if he indeed wants to invest into journalism, which I guess is probably the reason why he went for Darwin here. So, yeah, but with the ocean liner service, he might have a lot of population, additional yellow token, he could still get the team sports, so the Darwin has certainly some potential here, and I can see why he wants to secure him, but there's also the potential for him being a bit annoying if he maybe has to stay on religions, and he skips the selective breeding here, which at some point maybe could cause some famine issues. Now it's MV's turn, he seeds. I was hoping for not another strength event, and this time I don't get hit by one. I was actually willing to bid a warrior on 2 cards, which would leave me vulnerable to an aggression from E-Rock. I could potentially also send my army away for 5, and I would then be at 3 strength, so I could keep my cards, and then I would actually be able to defend. So I think if I would have won the colony, I would have done that, and then I would have transitioned into the fortifications tactic. I was willing to bid a little bit for this, and would actually be willing to send that much away, because as you can see, the Suez Canal is coming down the row, and I felt if I now secure this colony for myself and no one else has any colony, chances should be very high that I should get the Suez Canal. Sadly, now E-Rock is the one who wins the wealthy territory, and I was quite afraid that he might now take the Suez Canal away from me. Now it's Envy's turn, and he doesn't go for a revolution, which I thought could be an interesting thing to do, just going for a revolution, getting the Republic going very cheaply, but maybe there are some cards that he doesn't want to miss out on. He develops instead the Code of Laws here, goes for 2 iron upgrades, of course that's some value that he would be missing out on, and a Rifleman maybe being the card that he wanted to secure himself here. Could be an indicator that he maybe has a tactic for them, but also just being able to upgrade those warriors could be quite strong. E-Rock seeds. Again, no strength events, so a bit of relief. The cultural influence is revealed, which gives me and E-Rock a bit more culture than our opponents. E-Rock goes for another lab upgrade, goes for another mine upgrade, takes the cannon and increases his population. Just a very efficient turn. Interestingly, he's not willing to take any of the commons, but it's quite likely that he will just get them for cheap at his next turn. And I was just happy to see that despite winning the wealthy territory, he didn't go for the Suez Canal here. It would have been somewhat costly for him, so maybe, and especially if he doesn't have a strong colony, it would maybe just be too costly for him here. I offer the promise of military protection pact to Envy here, which cancels my naval trade agreement pact, because, yeah, I was at 8 strength, now I'm at 12. Of course, it doesn't help me defending against Envy. as then the pact would get cancelled, but it does make it that I am not the weakest any longer and actually the second strongest, and there are still 2 H1 events, then there are some H2 events coming, and I thought it's certainly possible that some more strength events are in there, and I was willing to sacrifice a bit of culture income to have maybe a chance winning those strength events. And as MV isn't a player who is affected by the strength increase himself, I thought that he might accept it, and he does so indeed. I will take the Suez Canal. I think this autonomous territory with already having a colony is just too strong. I have the masonry to finish the Suez Canal especially effective. And then I have 3 actions left, and those were also relatively clear for me here. I invest into coal, and I take the reserves. With having taken the reserves, I can finish the Suez Canal already the next turn if I want to. I can maybe also go for some more upgrades instead. And I get my coal upgrades going, and then I felt like that has quite some potential there. Here there's even James Cook coming down the row, so if he isn't taken away, maybe I can finally get a new leader going after having used Columbus some turns ago. I draw even another colonization card, the International Trade Agreement, so maybe I will replace my pact soon again. There was a lot of pact stuff going on already with Naval Trade Agreement, in an international, how is it called, trade agreement? No, how is it called? The Trade Routes Agreement, and now the International Trade Agreement, and the Promise of Military Protection Pact. And the scientific cooperation that got rejected, so indeed a lot of pact stuff going on. Tim this turn will take the architecture, doesn't elect Darwin yet, but that would cause some happy face issues for him, so instead he keeps Leonardo and is willing to pay an additional civil action for the architecture, but he can use the architecture to finish the ocean liner service very efficiently, and he can actually build a journalism going up to 8 science income, increasing his culture income as well, and I was feeling like, he's getting a big boost here as the ocean liner service, this journalism, and with Darwin will get even more culture income, so he certainly has quite some potential here, but Darwin, at least the loss of the happy face at the moment would still cause some issues for Tim. MV Seeds, the event revealed, is no strength event, so far my strength hasn't paid off yet. Instead there's a scientific breakthrough, and that gives Tim now an even bigger boost. He has now lots of science saved up. I get at least 4 additional science, but not as much as 2 of my opponents. MV this turn goes for the bread and circuses, maybe wants to prepare himself for Pierre, then goes for Robespierre. That maybe he was actually the reason. I'm not sure if he was in the card row already at the turn before. If yes, then I maybe missed him, but even if he wasn't in the row, it of course was also a very reasonable choice by MB to wait for him with going into Republic instead of doing a normal revolution. Maybe having corruption, not going for those upgrades, and mixing out in Rifleman was not a cost worthwhile doing when there is indeed Robespierre in the game. So he goes for Robespierre, does the Republic Revolution, goes for the Statue of Liberty, which I think is a strong wonder for him, and then takes the revolutionary ideas, while building a step so that he can finish the statue at the next turn, helping him to still get a bit of population in. Now it's Irok's turn. I was happy to see that both Cook and Bach are coming down the row. I have the dramas for Bach, and I have the Suez for Cook, so both leaders would be fine. Irok opens a colony, so again no strength events, so now my strength so far hasn't paid off. And as you can see, I was able to win this colony, but at quite a big price. I will actually send 2 warriors and all of my cards away. Instead I could have also sent all warriors away, but it only would allow me to keep 1 card, and so I instead rather kept the warrior. Of course I had to think about if I'm then still safe from an aggression from MV, because if he attacks me, of course my pact cancels, now I'm actually at 4 strength, but I planned out my next turn with having won this colony, and it does work for me, and I have now another colony, another 3 yellow tokens, so I was very happy about being able to win this, especially because I need to make a transition into the new fortifications tactic anyway, so I was quite happy being able to win this. Irok indeed gets a Conmo now for cheap, takes the left copy, maybe because of card row reasons, I don't know. Here takes Bach, elects Bach, develops the drama, goes for drama, is now at 8 culture income, has a very solid economy, has the Michikaste to defend himself, lots of actions, all of the military techs, so that's certainly not looking bad. Now it's my turn. with having drawn the International Trade Agreement, and with me this turn going quite a bit up in strength anyway, keeping the pact would actually make me the strongest now, but I don't know if there will be strength events coming. Instead, I actually offer the International Trade Agreement, as you can see, again to MV. And it was quite a tough choice. Not necessarily who to offer it to, even though that was also a bit of a tricky choice, as we will see. And but a maybe more tricky choice was whether I want to have additional food and resource income. Because I am facing one problem now. And the problem is, while getting the Suez Canal with autonomous is quite strong, I now have a very severe blue token shortage. Because I now won the vast territory, I will lose a total of 3 blue tokens. And that is somewhat challenging. And with being in such a situation on such a low blue token count, you have to be extremely careful and do quite a bit more planning for the next turns to really make sure to invest your resources and not just have corruption any turn. And those plannings already went into the International Trade Agreement Pact offer, because I very much thought about what do I want to invest into also at my next turn, and how I could use enough resources and food to then get out of corruption. And that was basically the main factor on whether I wanted to have additional resources or food. Both felt fine for me. I maybe would have even preferred additional food a bit more, with not having gotten farms upgrade going yet. But at the end, the resources allowed me the plan to get out of corruption at the next turn with the investments that I liked better, and so I offered it to Envy. And that at the end was a somewhat clear choice, not completely clear. I definitely didn't want to offer it to Tim, because Tim, as I said, his position has potential, but it also has issues, and I think this pact could really help him fixing those issues. Soon he has to go for Darwin. Team Sports isn't in sight yet, and Darwin and losing the happy face could really cause some issues for him, especially losing the happy face, and as soon as he loses the yellow tokens to the end of the age, also losing being in famine, so needing to build a farm, needing to fix his happy faces, maybe still also needing more military. I do feel that can soon cause some issues for him, and being able to just avoid famine by doing nothing, just accepting the pact, I think would be too big of a help for him. Irok, I considered it more, and at the end, I think also I don't want to offer food to him, because he is going into a bit of a greedy line, not that greedy, but he has Bach. He also has a solid economy, but not an overwhelmingly good one. His food income is not that great yet. So he might have a bit of a population shortage, and with Bach and those cheap dramas, it could be really important to keep him on low population, to maybe also be able to punish him in age 3 with maybe some military stuff. So at the end, I just felt the best to offer it to Envy, and despite having a promise of military protection with him, was still quite certain that he would accept this pact. We can now also maybe take a look at how I planned my next turn. The problem about taking food with the pact, but first of all, let's see what my turn looks like, because I need to rebuild strength, but I also want to get my Suez Canal going, and luckily I'm able to do both thanks to the 5 additional resources from the autonomous territory. I can finish the Suez Canal, get the autonomous with the additional resources, play the wave of nationalism, giving me enough resources to now build 2 cannons, just getting me out of corruption. As you can see, I'm at 0 food and 2 resources, so I can only have 2 blue tokens lying around. If I have more, I already have corruption, so that's a bit of a tricky situation. And then I have 2 civil actions left, and it was quite clear for me. Of course, I have to reveal the tactic, and then I have to go for Cook, taking him, electing him. Of course, those are some solid yellow cards. Of course, having the cavalryman for H3 tactics could be fine, but I didn't want to delay electing Cook, especially because I might also have a lot of stuff to do in the upcoming turns, with still needing to go into farm upgrades. And now, with the Suez Canal finished, I was quite happy about my position. 8 civil actions, 10 resource income, 8 culture income with Cook, so I'm a bit behind Iraq, but I will at least keep pace at the moment. And yeah, I felt like I somehow maneuvered myself, despite all of the strength event losses and the rebellion loss, into a good position, thanks to maybe the knowledge of the ancients, thanks to, of course, some good colony draws, as well as colony cards draws. Those helped me quite a bit, as well as the Suez Canal being not taken away. But out of the sudden, I felt my position has quite some potential here. My big weakness, however, is the blue token count, and with that, I said, had to really think about how I want to invest my resource at the next turn. The problem is, if I take additional food here from the trade agreement, I'm at 0 plus 2, and as I said, I can only have 2 blue tokens lying around, meaning I would need to invest all of my 11 resources that I would then have in order to not have corruption. And I think it was possible somehow. I'm not certain. I think it was somehow possible, but now that I have 12, what I can do here is to go for one farm upgrade for 4, one coal upgrade for 6, and one lab upgrade for 2, investing all of my resources and with that getting out of corruption. An alternative that I only saw at the next turn, but maybe also could have seen this turn already, is also the Kremlin that, thanks to the additional resource, is now an option. So I was hoping that at least at the next turn I will be able to, despite a few blue tokens, get out of corruption. Also with the cannons I'm now at 15 strength, so despite my few cards I'm still not in danger of an aggression. Tim seeds and opens the immigration. MV has to lose the population, so that's good news for me. Tim takes the cannons, the efficient upgrade, the strategy. Again, not electing Darwin. Again, he's of course a bit unfortunate that, the team spots have actually been taken away, so that's now a bit of an issue for him. He might have to get into organized religion, which could still be fine, but also Darwin will now be a bit annoying. And normally, of course, he would have really liked to elect Darwin already, because not only would he save a civil action on the strategy, but also it's quite likely that the age will end before his next turn. And but he can't do it because it would cause an uprising issue. He also maybe can't disband any unit, and so he is actually not electing Darwin here. And we see now the issues that this play maybe also causes for him. And also the next turn of the age, and he has famine. So let's see if how he will face those challenges. MV finishes the Statue of Liberty, takes the Patriotism, the Urban Growth, another Urban Growth, and a Breakthrough, and has now tons of yellow cards in hand. Then it's Eroc's turn. He takes the second copy of Architecture, which is interesting. At the moment, he doesn't have a wonder auto construction. He already has built some urban buildings, but there is, of course, still the potential that he gains quite some value out of it. He then takes the Breakthrough, upgrades one temple to Drama for free, and then takes the Rifleman. With that, it's just still H2 during my turn, which is somewhat relevant, because if it would already be H3 during my turn, then... Oh, no, it is actually H3, sorry, during my turn, so that's bad for me, because I was hoping that it still is H2, because if I now go for one farm upgrade, I sadly will only be at 1+2 instead of 1+3, so in 2 turns, or at the next turn, I will be missing 1 food to increase my population. H3 starts. I don't use my politics phase here. I could have maybe ceded the inhabited territory. I might not win it, but if I win it, it's good for the Suez and Cook. And if I don't win it, maybe if it's a bit later, it's not the most influential colony, but it could still be helpful. And so I decided against pushing it. And this turn, I then, as I said, discovered the option of the Gremlin. I could just take the Gremlin, even finish it immediately, and maybe then take rich land and organize religion or something. It could be fine, but I, at the end, didn't like it too much. Spending 2 civil actions in the rich land with my big production is maybe not the greatest thing to do. And at the end, I was still willing to take the Gremlin. It's relatively late, but I also have a lot of resources to invest in, and with the masonry, it's quite efficient to build a Gremlin. But I went for my planned upgrades first. I go for 1 farm upgrade. Ideally, I would like to go for 2, but that would then cause corruption, because I have no way to get out of corruption. Maybe I should do it regardless, but I felt maybe I should also still play it efficiently. And for now, I have the strength that I need, and soon I will be able to go for another farm upgrade, hopefully. So I go for 1 coal upgrade, 1 lab upgrade. I take the Gremlin, I use all of my actions, and the Gremlin allows me again also to get out of corruption at the next turn, because now that I will be at 3 food, I have only 1 blue token lying around at the selective breeding farm, and if I finish the Gremlin, I've spent all of my resources, and I again will be out of corruption. And I'm now at 12 resource income, which is of course quite strong. I draw a hybrid war, an impact of architecture. With my big production, there's maybe the potential to make that one quite big. Tim this turn elects Darwin, has now quite some happy face issues, is able to solve them somehow, even though not fully, with building that organized religion. Interestingly, builds an additional journalism, interesting in the sense that he also needs an additional farm and now has to disband a warrior to do it, but I think we will see now. No, we actually won't see, I think he will reveal the Hussars tactic soon, so that is already a reason why he's willing to disband his warrior and is willing to play it a bit greedily here, getting the journalism going, and with that having now tons of science and culture income. MV takes this early copy of Democracy with the Statue of Liberty. His culture reduction increases by 4, and he gets another 3 one-time culture by Robespierre. He then blazed the revolutionary idea, takes the frugality, the rich land, and increases his population. Now we are at the beginning of age 3, so maybe time to take a quick look at the overview. And we can see that with MV having gone for the democracy revolution, he is now actually ahead of me in culture. So culture-wise, Irok has a bit of a lead, has Bach, so he might be the player to catch, but all of the other opponents are not that far behind and also have their own culture engine going. So that's culture-wise somewhat tight, with Irok of course having the lead and also Irok having Dimitri Castle to defend himself. And yeah, then I think every player has the chance to win here still. MV, maybe when we just look at the stats, not having the greatest economy, especially compared to mine, but he has a lot of actions and he has all of those yellow cards in hand. I don't have a single yellow card in hand. He has all of those, so that also definitely has to be taken into account and makes his position quite a bit better than when we just take a look at the overview. Tim also having the ocean liner, having a strong Darwin setup, having some issues. Now it backfires maybe a bit, having no selective breeding available. But he has Darwin, who's producing 4 culture, might save him some civil actions, and but is a bit behind. So maybe he is in the best position, but his position has also a lot of potential. So he certainly could make a comeback. Irok has the culture lead, has a solid economy, but not an overwhelmingly good one, and especially his food income could be a bit of his weakness. He might not that easily be able to build a lot of military units, so if there soon will be some strength increases happening, he could have some trouble because of that. I was somewhat happy about my position because I have some really strong resource income. I will be able to upgrade my food even more. That's also definitely my weak spot. My population income isn't that great, but with the Kremlin I will have even more actions. My culture income will be even higher. So I thought I have a strong position, but I have to close the gap to Irok, and also the blue token issue certainly could maybe make it that I have at some point I have to suffer through some corruption. Irok takes the military theory, that of course will help him to make him quite safe, so that he doesn't get punished militarily. So I wasn't too happy to see that he increases his population. He could have built another drama, but instead he will actually do that, but he also builds an additional farm to maybe it will take a while, of course, but it might, with now being built early in age 3, still pay off and fix the weakness that we just talked about. This turn, I'm one of the 2 strongest, some time no one has seeded, and this turn I was willing to push the inhabited territory, because now it will be even later when it will be revealed with no one having pushed, and so I just wanted to have the 2 culture, the impact of architecture. I wasn't willing to push yet. The independence declaration is revealed. Tim is weakest but doesn't have any colonies, so doesn't do anything. And this turn, in order to get out of corruption, and also of course I want to finish it as quickly as possible, I will finish the Kremlin, going up to 9 actions and 5 civil actions and 5 military actions. I wasn't too certain about how I should spend my remaining civil actions, because I kind of just have to take some cards with them. I decided to first of all take a copy of Organized Religion. With having the St. Peter's Basilica, of course you might argue that I don't need to take that. Maybe I can just build religions, maybe I can go for movies. The thing is, I'm low in population, and it certainly in some variations could still end up being quite important, being able to upgrade this religion to Organized Religion. So I wanted to have this option available, especially when it's only costing me 1 civil action. I take the reserves, and that of course is just a flexible card, and I especially also took it with the thought in mind that I might just use it to increase my population. For example, if I played for food at the next turn, I can increase my population twice. I could just take another copy of reserves, potentially having even more food available, but with me still having to do some upgrades, I then took the efficient upgrade, and then I have 2 civil actions left. And here I'm not certain if I did the correct decision, but I took the democracy. And that is actually a bit of hate drafting here, because maybe for myself the movies are more important. I have this hybrid war, and I thought maybe I was, instead of investing into movies, I want to go for a bit of strength pressure here, but especially with the St. Peter's Basilica and also with Chaplin and Marlene Dietrich being in the game, I think movies and with my big resource income could be quite nice to have. The democracy, on the other hand, isn't doing that much for me now. It could at some point, of course, still be an interesting card. The thing is, I thought that if I leave Tim the second copy of democracy here, that would just give him such a big boost. It would be the perfect thing for him to invest his science into. The thing is, he also has some alternatives. He could get into oil, he can maybe then build some movies, but it's the second copy. If I take it now, it will be gone for him, and I do feel like that would just give him such a big boost that I, even though it's a 4-player game, was willing to go for a bit of a suboptimal play for myself here. If that's correct, I don't know. Um, Maybe I should just secure myself the movies, but I was rather thinking that I thought I could maybe invest into military. If there are computers, I could invest into computers. Going for one of the computer leaders, I could maybe get Arenas and Pierre. I could just get a second copy of movies, maybe somehow make it work to go for multimedia at some point. I actually have enough science for both organized religion and multimedia at the next turn, so I was hoping that there will be other options available to invest my resources into. I draw some cards and I was happy about it. Draws, the impact of colonies, just a good impact. The impact of culture at least has some potential. Tim takes the tanks for civil action cheaper thanks to Darwin, takes the oil for civil action cheaper thanks to Darwin, upgrades one oil, increases his population, takes the movie, so I denied him the democracy, but he has now some other stuff that he can, that is also nice for him. He now reveals the Hazard's tactic. So now he isn't needing the warriors any longer. Envy gets the first copy of computers, goes for some upgrades. For the second one, isn't using the urban growth, probably because of corruption reasons. Goes for another knight. His military setup is somewhat weak, but he secures himself the second copy of tanks. With Tim having revealed the Hazard's tactic, he has the knowledge that he can soon maybe go for copying that. Now it's Irok's turn, and he will go for the team spells, builds one, takes the revolutionary idea and the military build-up, so a very straightforward, solid turn. Skips the wonders for now. Now it's my turn. Again, no one has seeded, and I have some strong impacts. I might draw more, because my strong economy might result in at least some good impact. So I seeded the impact of colonies in the deck, and the freedom of movement is revealed, which I will use to put a warrior into cannons, so it's a nice event for me to see. And this turn I also really wanted to get my second farm upgrade going, and now we can see that the organized religion is actually quite useful, because what I will do here is to increase my population, develop the organized religion, go for an upgrade, building a cannon, and with having done that, I again have spent all of my resources. The freedom of movement was quite helpful here. And I am now 25 strength, being the strongest, being prepared for some strength events, maybe causing a bit of pressure, especially for Tim and maybe a little bit for Irok, with being on those cannons. I have a hybrid war in hand, who knows, maybe I can make it work. And now I have 5 civil actions left, and it would actually be exactly the amount to take the space flight here, which is a somewhat solid one of myself. Probably it won't be too big unless I get some quick science upgrades going at the next turn. But it also again would be a bit of a denial for Tim, who already scores a lot of points. But after having denied the democracy, I felt like I shouldn't go for another denial here, or shouldn't take the space flight because of denial reasons. Because with taking the democracy, I think I have already done a bit of damage to Tim's position. And I thought about it, but the thing is, there are 2 more wonders in the deck that might even be better for myself, or at least equal. And I decided to rather wait for them. Fast food chains and also United Nations. It would actually be my 5th wonder, so I gain 20 points plus a potential impact. So that would be quite solid. And of course, I don't know if I have a good opportunity to take such a wonder. So it was a close call for me, but at the end, getting a revolutionary idea on urban growth and satellites, which also helps for a bunch of impacts, just felt like a relatively good use out of those actions. I'm not sure, maybe I should just take the wonder, but at the end I went with those cards. I get some draws, the international tourism, normally a very nice thing to see, but here, first of all, to cancel my international trade agreement, but also I have 4 wonders, all of my opponents have only 2, so whoever I offer it to just gets a lot more out of it than I do, so I will have to see if I will end up offering it. Tim seeds and opens the iconoclasm, so that's an interesting card to see. All leaders are out of the sudden removed. I on one hand wasn't too happy because James Cook was producing me for a culture turn, and there is even another colony still coming. But at least losing Darwin and Bach also hurts Tim and Irok. Envy doesn't get hit by that really, so maybe he was the one putting that event into the deck. And I was happy to see that it at least was revealed immediately after my turn, so it would have been worse for me if Tim and maybe MV could have kept the benefits of their leaders. Maybe MV could have done a revolution into communism, and then only it would have been revealed at Erox or mine turn, and they still would have gotten a turn out of the leaders, so I was somewhat happy or somewhat fine with that outcome. Tim this turn builds the movies, increases his culture income, takes Pierre, goes for another oil upgrade and takes the efficient upgrade. Has, with the freedom of movement, put a warrior into farms, so now he should be somewhat fine with avoiding any famine. There's also the prosperity revealed now, so some additional food. That food is quite important for MV, because he, after adopting Hussars, will now go, and I think use the freedom of movement probably to put a warrior into knights, yes, and he goes for the Red Cross. He's missing one civil action to just finish it, and he can also build 4 actions with going for the engineering, so he will do that, build 4 actions, and Erok will then be able to finish it, so sadly I won't get any step, which is not that great. It gives MV and also Erok some points against me, and even MV, as we will see at the end of his turn, will now even be in the lead, at least for a moment, until Erok has built the last step of the Red Cross. Even though there are a bunch of colonies in there, so yeah, even then he is quite close with Erok. So that's giving him quite a boost. Erok goes for the civil service, has now already quite a nice impact of progress. He then builds the step of the Red Cross, takes the internet, takes the patriotism, and takes the reserves. So takes a bunch of cards. Now it's my turn, and I now have to think about how do I want to close the gap now that has happened because of the Red Cross. I could just, for example, take the fast food chains, play some more impacts, do some stuff, but I haven't taken the movies early on, which maybe was a mistake, and there will now be another copy be revealed, but some 3 civil actions, so it's somewhat costly, so taking that and the fast food chains is costly. I could maybe go into movies and then hope to get United Nations, but that's not for certain. Then I took another look at my opponent's civilization. MV has just gone for the Red Cross, and I looked at his civilization. I felt he's maybe somewhat vulnerable, because he has only 3 military actions. The patriotism, he could of course get a military theory, but he is just not enough. He's missing 3 signs to go for both military theory and tanks he maybe needs to get some really efficient strength, tanks or maybe air forces. I was looking at his turn, and also at the moment he's using all of his happy faces. And with seeing that, I started to try out some hybrid war turns. And at the end, I found the option of going for hybrid war quite nice. It will definitely hurt MV quite a bit. The question is, of course, is it good enough against Erok? Because the hybrid war isn't giving me that much culture. But at the end, I still felt it's a good play. It forces immediately MV to respond, and Erok also maybe has to respond, and I could still maybe go into United Nations afterwards. So I decided to go for the hybrid war here. I declare the hybrid war. I at the moment have some unhappy workers, but there is a solution for it in the card draw, and that is Steve Jobs. I need a new leader anyway. I don't have the most science, but I have a revolutionary idea, so I can get some activations out of him. And the thing is, I have the St. Peter's Basilica, so electing him not only gives me 1, but actually 2 happy faces, which is just the amount of happy faces that I need to, despite the 2 unhappy workers from the hybrid war, increase my population, go for 2 cannons, develop the satellites with the Steve Jobs activation. The 1 resource that I spent thanks to Steve Jobs is actually getting me out of corruption, so Steve Jobs, at the first look, it doesn't look like a good situation for him, or at least not like a very good one, but as actually he is quite crucial here. And now I go up to 39 strength, and MV could maybe come close to that, depending on how much sacrifices he will be able to do, but I should very likely be able to win this war. There's a copy of Professional Sports coming down the row, and at the moment, MV has 2 unhappy workers. If he increases his population and builds the bread and circuses, he still has an uprising issue. So that's quite problematic for him, but the professional sports would be a very nice fix for him. The thing is, Tim has taken Pierre, and here, with having Pierre, I thought might very well take the professional spots for 2 actions, because it's a card that he maybe wants to have anyway. It's helpful for a lot of impacts, it's helpful for Pierre, it's also giving him some strength, and he also denies it from Envy, makes his position a bit harder. Maybe also with that makes it that Envy stays a bit more vulnerable, and that if there should be a second war happening, he's not as much in danger as he otherwise potentially could be. And so I was really hoping that Tim might deny the professional spots, but even if MV gets it, I will still win the war. But then it might be questionable whether it was even worth it to declare it. So I was somewhat hoping that the professional spots would be taken away. There's also a second copy, so that of course could also be something that the second copy will be revealed, but it could already make a difference whether the professional spots is available for cheap or for expensive for MV, as he needs to spend some actions to do all of the stuff for his defense. So I was, with the hybrid warplay, somewhat hoping that the professional spots would be taken, but even if they are not taken and MV gets them, I still win the war. So I developed the satellites, I have 4 actions left. I could even deny the professional spots myself. Maybe I should have done it, but at the end I just hoped that Tim would take them, and there are some other cards that are maybe nice for myself to have. A copy of Reserves, a copy of Urban Growth, and then I can play the Revolutionary Idea already. If I still want to go for the United Nations, I will need a lot of actions, and I don't want to go for denial here if it's maybe somewhat likely that Tim will take it anyway, and I wanted to have the yellow cards, and then was just hoping that it will be taken away. I draw an impact of strength, which I was happy to see. And now it is the time when Tim decided to drop from the tournament. As he talked with Wolves about it, he just at the moment doesn't have enough time to play those turns. And he was asking Wolves and stopped playing at this time, and asked him what to do, and then at the end they come to the conclusion that Tim should just resign the games, the 2 4-player games and also the 3-player games that were just at the beginning, so those were then restarted, as I said at the beginning of the video. Unfortunately, while Tim waited on how to handle all of this, he didn't realize how low he already was in reserve time. So while he resigned in all of the other games, sadly here he accidentally, it wasn't on purpose, ran out of reserve time. So instead of a resignation, a bot took actually over. So not that ideal, of course. Now playing the remainder of the game with bot, and in general, of course, unfortunate that Tim can't continue playing. It would have been, of course, great if he could continue playing, but sometimes, of course, stuff in real life is more important than those through the ages tournaments. And now a bot will take over, but that could actually be beneficial for me, because if Tim would resign here, then the professional spots would just go to MV, and that, of course, would have quite an impact on. Because I was kind of hoping that Tim might take those. But now a bot takes over, and now of course I was interested to see, did bot take the professional spots, or will he let the professional spots through to MV? The bot seeds Crime Wave is revealed. I'm not part of that, so that's a good event to see. The bot will elect Pierre, develops the tank, so starts increasing his strength. So is doing quite a nice job with that, builds some units, and has actually the mechanized army tactic, so is doing quite well. But sadly, with his last 2 actions, he's not taking the professional spots, instead the endowment, the engineering genius, which of course also are reasonable choices, but I kind of think the professional spots would have been quite a nice card to take here for Tim, and so I guess it was fair, because Tim resigned all of the other games, so it would now a bit unfair also if the bot now acts in my favored way, but of course, I also kind of declared a war with thinking that, with not knowing that Tim will now not continue playing, and that was of course a bit unfortunate, and I was a bit annoyed that MV will now be able to get the pro spots. Of course, there was always a risk that Tim wouldn't take it even if he continues playing. So I was a bit annoyed, but I will already mention it in the other 4-player game, the resignation of Tim in that game benefited me and hurt MV. I won't say more than that, but with that, both of those things maybe somewhat equaled themselves out, and not that much damage was done with Tim leaving those games. But in both games, it had quite a bit of an effect. Here with Tim not taking pro spots, which he otherwise might have done. We don't know it. And in the other game, we will see this in the next video. So now for MV, sadly, the professional spots are available. He will go for Gandhi, develops the tanks, plays the patriotism, goes for some upgrades, takes the professional spots, and sadly now when he increases his population and builds one with the urban growth, he can fix his happy faces and is now 34 strength. And we can also see if there would be the second copy revealed, he needed now all of his actions with the professional spots being in one civil action, so he at least would have skipped something, maybe going for Gandhi. And yeah, with that, he is now at 34 strength. I still steal 5 culture, but that's not that much. I skipped a wonder in order to do that, and I was not too happy about it, of course. But I still steal 5 culture. I might get the United Nations. I have some good impacts in there, so I'm still totally in the game. Iraq reveals the inhabited territory and is able to win it. Both of the players who are in war, of course, are not bidding for this. The bot at least makes Iraq pay a little bit for this, but he has a lot of defense cards, so gets it for just 1 unit. Will now go for Marlene Dietrich, plays the military build-up, goes for the cannons for 1, 2, 3 cannons, is now at 30 strength, and then takes the air forces. So with my strength push, at least he had to respond to that, but also finds nice ways to do that with going for Marlene, having now her ability for the fortifications, patriotism reserves, revolutionary air forces, Amici Castle. With that, he's just completely safe. But the thing is also, I don't have a second war, so I can't declare any wars here. Also, Iraq managed something very nice here, being at 111 plus 11 culture. That's of course a nice sight. I steal 5 culture from MV. I push the Impact of Happiness into the deck. It was a bit tricky because both Impact of Strength and Impact of Culture might end up being impacts that I could actually win. But for both of them, I didn't want to commit to them yet, because I don't know if I get the United Nations, and if I get the United Nations, it probably is the best play to go for the United Nations. But then I don't have that many resources left over, and depending on what my opponents do, I might not be able to win those impacts. And so I wasn't willing here to commit to those already, even though I would have liked it, because the Impact of Happiness is not that great, but at least some culture I gained for seeding it. And yeah, so I see the Impact of Happiness into the deck. The Civil Unrest is revealed. The bot loses 4 culture to that. And this turn I will go for movies. I will develop them. I score a resource with Steve Jobs. And this turn I will do a decision that I maybe didn't consider as closely as I should have. Because I will go for movies, and the big question was whether I should blow up a mine and build one, and then play the reserves for resources, or whether I should play the reserves for food, increase my population instead of blowing up a mine, keeping the 1 additional resource production, and building a movie. And I considered both of those lines. The question is, of course, also, do I get the United Nations? The bot behavior is, of course, not that much predictable, but if the United Nations is available, it very well might take the United Nations. MV actually could take the United Nations, but doesn't have enough resources to build it the turn after. While there is a copy of reserves left in the deck, both United Nations and reserves would need to drop down to 2 civil actions in order for MV to be able to take it. And with that, it's not likely that he can finish it, but he could still hate draft it, which might be reasonable. Maybe he doesn't have that much else to do. So I felt like maybe it's not that likely that the United Nations is available for me. And in the lines that I have available for myself, where it isn't available, the additional population that I get by playing the reserves could just be very important, especially with preparing for a lot of different impacts. So I, with thinking about the lines that I have when I don't get United Nations, thought that I maybe should play it for food. And I thought, of course, also about my situation when I have the United Nations, but maybe not as closely as I should have, because having the 2 additional resources from playing the reserves for resources and then destroying a mine and not playing it for food, allows me to have enough resources to take the United Nations and build it, and with this urban growth, build a movie. If I now also, after taking the revolutionary idea, which allows me to go for democracy, already played a reserves resources. I wanted to be able to go for the democracy because if I go for that and some more movies, I should be able to win the impact of culture if I don't get the United Nations. And who knows, if I get United Nations and play the revolutionary idea on democracy, I also might be able to get the impact of culture. The thing is, if the United Nations stays on the 3 civil action area for me, after taking it and finishing it, I have only 1 civil action left, and I somehow always thought my turns with playing revolutionary and the idea on democracy somewhat not. I'm not sure if I just didn't realize it that I am that few in actions after taking the United Nations, or if I just thought I would drop down to 2. I think I just didn't take a close enough look at the turn, but I felt like I might not build a movie anyway. I rather might invest into democracy, get another Steve Jobs activation, and then I rather wanted to be better prepared for the lines when I don't have the United Nations. But the ability to disband a cannon, build a movie, and then take and finish United Nations, even when it's in the 3 civil action area, does certainly allow me some options and makes it quite a bit more likely that I could maybe evaluate an impact of culture with that wonder. And that's something that I didn't have in mind as much. But there's also one thing that isn't completely clear to me because it's quite. I'm too lazy to calculate it, and that's something that I only realized after ending my turn. So far this turn, I very nicely, or I think I played quite nicely around my low blue token count. Apart from this turn, I think I, in all of the turns before, managed to get out of corruption. This turn, however, I didn't consider that actually I might have some issues with not being able to store enough stuff. I was very lucky that I actually didn't lose anything because of my blue token shortage here, because I didn't count towards that as all. I just thought, I just didn't think about it, but just 1 blue token more in any area of my civilization, and I could have lost some production that I already calculated in. And now it's of course the question, if I would have played the reserves and blown up a mine, would I maybe not even have the blue tokens, or maybe would just be some from bronze mines on coal? I only realized it afterwards, and then I was too lazy to calculate it because that blue token stuff is not that intuitive. And maybe if one of you is motivated, you can maybe do a calculation on whether I would have actually had the blue tokens to get 2 additional resources here, how it would have worked if I played it. If I didn't play it for food and then played it for resources but blown up a mine, if you are very motivated, you can maybe calculate it. I was happy to draw the impact of wonders because that's definitely a good impact for me. Tim Seeds, the impact of colonies is revealed. It's also a good impact for me. Only E-Rock also gets a decent amount out of it. Tim goes for the mechanized agriculture, or the bot. He upgrades one that might help him for impacts. He also builds some units, builds a temple, so has quite a well-balanced civilization here. The United Nations are not revealed, so with that I knew now that I at my turn will be able to take them. MV Seeds, the impact of balance is revealed. The bot just before that very nicely prepared for the impact, so the bot doing a decent job so far, apart from denying the professional sports, of course. MV plays the frugality, takes the multimedia, the reserves, makes sure that the H ends, builds the multimedia, and then takes the rockets. And now it would have been ideal for me if the United Nations would have been revealed as discard, which I guess is a bit to ask for. It's not that likely, but yeah, it dropping down to 2 civil actions would have made quite a big difference for me. E-Rock goes for actually building an air force and also a team sports, and that will be quite relevant during my turn. And then he finishes the internet for 22 points, so that's quite solid, takes the computers, lets the United Nations stay in 3. If those would be on here, then he might have just not taken the computers here. And for me it was clear here that I have to go for the United Nations. I considered some more lines, and it actually was a bit closer than I expected, but it's still just the best thing to do. And I also can't make both Impact of Culture and Strength work, and with that it was also clear for me that I had to seed the Impact of Wonders and then evaluate one of those with the United Nations. Or maybe evaluate none, which also could be considered, as we will see. The Impact of Happiness is revealed, which is relatively neutral, but at least MV gains a little bit less than I out of that impact. I will take the United Nations. That leaves me with 2 civil actions. One of them I need to finish the United Nations. And if I would have had 2 additional resources, and we don't know if that would have been even possible with my blue token count, I then could have now disbanded a cannon, built a movie, finished the United Nations, and with 14 culture I would have been able to evaluate the Impact of Culture, which even would have given me plus 15 against Iraq. Now I sadly am not able to do this. I can only build a religion, or an organized religion, putting me at 11 culture. I also sadly am missing 1 resource to build another cannon, which then would allow me to evaluate the Impact of Strength, winning the Impact of Strength, but now I could only build a warrior, and Iraq sadly made sure to be prepared for the Impact of Strength, so now I'm somewhat limited, and sadly I was missing an action in order to be able to play Revolutionary Idea and develop democracy, so United Nations sadly being in the spot where I don't have enough actions to do that, because already with 13 culture income I would have been able to win the Impact of Culture during my turn. But yeah, that's something that I just didn't consider as closely, how nice it might be in such a situation to just be able to disband a cannon and build a movie. I didn't go deep enough in my preparation, so I do get a bit punished for here, but now the question is how to play around it, or what is the best decision now. And it was a somewhat tough choice, because there are different options. I could just evaluate none of those impacts, as none of those impacts is best for me. And it's the question, do I want to play for first place or for second? Because what I considered is, instead of disbanding a cannon, building a movie, I could, as I said, build an organized religion. I could then finish the United Nations and still evaluate Impact of Culture. Sadly, it would not nearly be as great, but I would still get plus 10 against Iraq, but Envy would gain plus 5 against me. So yeah, that of course would bring me closer to Iraq. I could, on the other hand, also just evaluate the Impact of Strength, giving up on the first place, gifting 5 points to Iraq instead of to MV, and then gaining some points against MV. Impact of Architecture isn't an option, that's just a bad one for me. And with that being such an important decision, I did quite some calculations about the impacts. And the result of all of that was that while it's not completely impossible for me to finish first when I evaluate the Impact of Culture here, it's very unlikely. There are a bunch of impacts that could punish me. There could be a big impact of progress for Iraq. I don't remember everything of my calculations, but it's just, I was really not that likely. Especially there couldn't be an impact of science, there could be a bunch of bad impacts and I need to catch up some points to him. There are not that many impacts that allow some big catching up for me. So I thought it's very unlikely, if I reveal the Impact of Culture even, to overtake Iraq. However, it is actually quite close still between me and Envy, despite him not getting a wonder. And with that I decided to finish the United Nations, got 20 points for that, and then evaluate the Impact of Strength, basically giving up on my chances for first place, trying to secure my second place here, gaining 5 points against Envy. And after having evaluated that, I will disband a unit of cannon to still get a bit of culture income going, also improving my Impact of Harmony, and yeah, just getting 1 culture. And yeah, but if I would have been able to build this movie, or if the United Nations would have dropped here and I would have been able to go for democracy, there might have been some hope left with gaining plus 15 points against Iraq with an Impact of Culture instead of now gifting 15 points to him. So that I was not too happy about doing this decision. I tried also about offering pacts, and then because of that being evaluated an impact, but I can't miss out on the Impact of Wonders, so that wasn't really an option. The bot seeds. Now there were actually quite a lot of impacts seeded by the bot, so that's of course a bit random, and who knows what the bot decided to seed. The Impact of Population is revealed, quite a strong one for the bot, and sadly I'm the worst one, so one of the bad impacts for me. The bot plays the endowment, upgrades, destroys a mine, builds a religion, so it looks like a solid turn. Envy plays the reserves resources, increases his population, builds another farm. That could be a signal for an impact of harmony, especially now with also building an additional urban building. So he prepares for some impacts, also the impact of agriculture, maybe the impact of progress. Takes the patriotism and the modern infantry. And then before the final impacts, we can see that I'm in the lead before MV. But despite the impact of strength that I evaluated, I am only 15 pints in the lead, so I can definitely have hope to keep my second place, but there are impacts, like impact of science, would already make it that MV is at the same amount of culture than I am. Then, of course, I have my good impact of wonders, but there are some other bad ones for me, so I was definitely a bit worried that I could be overtaken here, while I didn't have really a lot of hope to catch up to Iraq. First impact is the impact of harmony. That's not too bad for me, but MV is able to catch up 4 points in that one. The bot also has 24. Then there is the impact of wonder, so that's my good impact that I have seeded. I gain 7 points against MV, catching up to Iraq. There's the impact of government, a good one for Iraq, also solid for me with 23, while MV has 22, so I gained +1. I was happy to see that that is one of the slightly good impacts for me. There's the impact of competition, that's +10 for me, but +14 for MV, so he's getting closer again. Something like an impact of science would again tie me, and now my impact of wonders is already out. There's the impact of agriculture, that's +10 for me, only +9 for MV, that gave me some hope. Now it would need to be a very big impact for MV to catch up. It's the impact of variety, that gives me +14. MV does get a higher amount out of it, but only +18. The bot gets the most out of it actually, and with that I am able to keep my second place, and without the impact of strength reveal I still would have been before MV, and even if I would have evaluated the impact of culture, I also still would have been before MV, but then it would have been extremely close. I almost might have thrown my second place away then. If I would have evaluated the impact of culture for 10 points against Iraq, then I would have been 15 points closer. So it wouldn't have been enough for the first place, and it wouldn't have been as close as I would be to MV then. So I think it was the correct decision to evaluate the impact of strength, because the impacts were actually quite tame. There could have been some worse ones. There was no impact of science, no impact of progress. If I would have been able to build a movie, or if I would have gone for democracy, then things could have actually gotten quite close. If I would have gone for a movie, I would have had 3 more culture income, and I would have gotten +15 against Iraq instead of -5. So I would be at +23, but as you can see, I would still be 4 points behind Iraq, and if I would have been able to go for democracy, I would have gotten 2 more culture reduction, +4 from Steve Jobs, so that's 6, 26, and even then I wouldn't have been able to win this game, so I at the end probably didn't, or I guess, wait, with the democracy I also of course would have scored more points for the impact of government, then maybe we actually would have had a tie. So no, but that wasn't because of a mistake, that was just because the United Nations was not available. That's just what could have been if everything went perfect for me. But yeah, if it was possible to save up those 2 additional resources, things could have gotten quite a bit closer, but maybe I also just didn't have enough blue tokens for it. Anyway, it was quite an interesting game. Of course, I'm not getting a win, but a second place is still a solid result. And yeah, it was quite an exciting game. Sadly, of course, with the bot involved at the end, and sadly, of course, also Tim dropping out of the tournament. But at least after the 4-player games, there will still be 3 3-player games for every one of 3 of us, and those should be some high-level games. So the group is not completely ruined or something. I think it still will be exciting to play it out, of course, and there should be some exciting games ahead of us. That was the first game finished, so we don't have to take a look at the standings. And yeah, I hope you're excited for the 4th stage of the World Championship. Let me know what you think of this game, what I maybe could have done differently, or what were some exciting moments for you. And then we are at the end of the video. I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.